So today I wanted to
So I
talk to you
noticed that
about.
we've got a little bit of. Go ahead.
Today I wanted to talk about. Well, we've been doing a lot on sensory acuity, but I wanted to talk about the read and how important the read is and how you learn to do that well. Because I've never seen anyone read anybody like you do from a distance, verbally, non-verbally, and I was wondering if you could expound on that a little bit.
Well, it's fun to be live today talking about that, Josh. Good to see you. Um, the idea of reading someone really has to do with what their nonverbals are telling you. I mean, obviously, if somebody tells you what's really going on with them, you don't need sensory acuity. You don't need to be good at reading their nonverbals. But as we studied Virginia Satir, we find out that, as it turns out, many people are not safe enough to level with you. They're not safe enough. They're too afraid of embarrassment. They're too afraid of scrutiny. Maybe they're afraid of shame. So for a lot of reasons, they don't know how to even be real with themselves, let's say. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up as a heart patient, and obviously there were times when sports were out. So I found myself doing a lot of theater, plays. The beauty of that is you make a lot of very public mistakes. I'd be in summer touring companies, and you'd learn how to play off the other actors, and you could tell whether they were going to get it together or not get it together. You'd be doing all kinds of weird skills like juggling or dancing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to get used to paying attention to all the other actors and actresses. You'd have to drop your ego, because if you were being a prima donna, really bad things would happen. If you were caught up in yourself, you'd screw up the whole play. You'd screw up the whole production. Sometimes there were hundreds of thousands of dollars out in production costs, and one person not paying attention to the rest of the people would cost you the whole thing. The other thing that seems to help with instinct with the read is having been stuck in the hospital a lot as a kid, which is also similar to Erickson, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're just sitting there watching the nurses, watching people, and you can't really do anything. You can't get caught up in yourself. You're fantasizing and guessing, really guessing in your head what's going on. Excuse the steadiness of my phone for a minute, but you're guessing what's going on with those other people, aren't you?
Yes.
You're just making it up. But you have enough time to check whether you're right or not. The beauty of doing that when you're a kid is you're not threatening. You're just this 12-year-old heart patient laying in a bed or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people will tell you kind of whether you're on track or off track, right? So eventually, I started realizing how much time it took in my office for people to confess what was going on with them. And I found that it was more compassionate to sort of get it on the table or provoke a response that was considerate or confess for them and check if it was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that kind of the way that Connie Ray Andreas approached the beginning of reframing someone, where I would say, I'm curious, is it like this? I'm curious, is it like that? And then I would do my best guess and check it. Well, after thousands and thousands of clients with sensory acuity training, NLP training, hypnosis training, eventually that read became double checked with so many people that it became very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to look at it as a system, Josh, I think you'd say, one, be really interested in what's going on with them, where you've kind of forgotten what's going on with you for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, in the beginning, that happened in me because I didn't want to pay attention to what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was not having a pleasant experience. It was much more pleasant to focus and guess what they were going through. Right?
Yeah.
So it starts out as almost a problem that can be spun into something really good if you're helping a person to notice what their strategy is now and how it compares with the strategy they would need to get the life they want to lead. So do you have any thoughts about that?
I do. We spoke about this, and I'm glad that, we spoke about it just due to the fact that I thought we were going to have this conversation. This conversation is extremely important to the folks that are watching and listening. When you can step outside of yourself and take true inventory and do it in a loving, caring way, it serves like multiple purposes. And one of the ways that people have gone down that road is because of their own internal strife that's happening, or the things bothering them at the time.
Your audio is breaking up. I had your audio break up there for a minute.
So what I was saying is that, like, it does have, we discussed it and how important it is for people to hear it from you as the true master of reading people, and in our craft, that a lot of times it does serve a dual purpose. And when people can step outside of themselves, sometimes they are forced their way out. They force themselves outside of themselves due to some internal strife or some pain, some physical or emotional pain that's happening. And when that is absent, or that is in the background, or not really part of the situation, then it is very easy to be able to focus on other folks.
Good. Well, let me see if I understood you. And again, your audio is breaking up a little bit. But Josh, what I would say is this. Another thing that helps, like, you kind of have a Hollywood looks thing going on, And when I was a young person and I had my own hair, people responded to me differently than how they respond to me now. So another thing that really helps with the read is when people change. Like if you watch people respond to Heather versus responding to me, or watch people responding to you versus responding to me. One of the really fun things that we like to do is have me tell someone an exact paragraph, and then Heather tell them the exact same thing. And you'd be surprised how many times, Josh, they would say, well, if he would have said it that way. And it was literally word for word what I said. Right? So what that starts to show is, even if you're good at reading people, even if you're good at understanding what's going on with them, you then have the additional skill that you need of understanding that they may or may not respond to a certain approach. So you got to be pretty flexible in how you communicate with them. You remember when I was wearing the big handlebar mustache because I was playing Ren Fairs a year or two ago?
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how many people were freaked out by the fact that I was wearing that handlebar mustache. Now think about how long I was a corporate hypnotist, seeing, literally 150 clients a week in multiple locations with staff, looking like I worked at a computer company or something. And if I change that one little thing, it changes whether or not they can trust that read, whether they'll believe that read or not. Right? So there's some interesting realities in terms of not just how good your perception needs to be, or how good you need to be at checking your interpretation, but also, Josh, how flexible you need to be to come across right to that person, to come across right to that other person.
That's an important
point. Does that make
point.
Any sense?
It makes great sense.
It is.
And that's an important point about the flexibility key that comes with making the read, and making sure that the read is being received or is available to the person due to the circumstance, due to moving my hand back and forth here, due to the situation and how you present the presentation. That's what I wanted, the presentation.
Right. So in training other people to do that presentation, you'll notice that at certain times in the seminars, I'll be very corporate or very conservative. At other times, I'll literally show up wearing a top hat and carrying a cane.
I think we've lost him. Well, folks, that was Scott McFall. Those are brilliant nuggets on the read as we move forward. Oh, is he back?
Yeah, Adam.
How do I do that?
Okay. Shit.
There he is. Brilliant nuggets on the read and how it happens effectively and simply and elegantly. And he's back. Hello, Scott.
So one thing that you two should be aware of is every time the volume of hi there, good to be back.
Hey.
So every time the volume of your voice is a little too high, it clips, just so you know, digitally.
Okay.
So you can talk pretty gently.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you think about what you thought was so amazing about the read, what was your big surprise about what it could accomplish?
Oh, in the beginning, I didn't think it was something that was real. And then I realized, as watching you and learning from you and others in the group that have been doing it successfully, I noticed that what it shows is almost doorways to different levels of suggestion that is necessary or that creates a possibility for change. So it almost shows like to me, when I think about that, I don't know, I see it visually in my head. There's almost like different layers to the read, and one might be attached to the other, but all the reads show situations that create possibility in receiving and giving suggestion.
Let me simplify what you just said and see if I understand it.
Okay.
They can't think you don't understand if you just proved you understand.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's a big help.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that's true is everyone likes to talk about Ericksonian hypnosis as if they actually know what they're talking about. And one of the powerful things that Erickson loved to do is called utilization. Utilizing what's going on with the person as the foundation for the next suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best utilization stories is in the book My Voice Will Go With You. And that story is Walk a Mile, where he's utilizing the challenges and the conveniences that a retired police officer is going through in order to accomplish that person being trapped into taking action. And when Erickson is doing this utilization, it isn't particularly nice because the retired police officer is trapped into having to take action. And the reading what's really going on with someone, whether they told it to you or not, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, if you can't read what's really going on with them, you can't utilize what's really going on with them. You can't take their experience now and braid it in with the suggestions you're doing for their future if you don't see and interpret what's going on with them accurately. And if you only do that with your ears, that's very disrespectful to the way the nervous system works, because there are so many automatic behaviors. You don't really have to think about tying your shoes. You may not remember the effort of riding a bike. Things become automatic quite quickly in our life. And so to expect a person to be able to verbally report about themselves with extreme accuracy is really sort of a fantasy, like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
So as a mature, caring healer, this is creating a terrible problem for us, because we need to be able to read that person without vanity, without projecting anything on them, which is almost impossible. So it's a never-ending challenge to get better and better at reading what's going on. And most people, they want to feel so valuable that they get superior when they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I did when I was in my teens and 20s myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that wrecks the read, because you can have contempt for a problem that someone's going through, but you can't have contempt for them.
Right.
And the minute we start to feel superior while we're doing this, the condescension seems, creepy. So it takes a lot of practice to be able to do a read and stay in a mood that makes the other person happy you're doing the read instead of threatened. Remember, there's something in magic and mentalism called cold reading,
Yes.
which is to state general truths that the person will think are amazing. But it's sort of a deception in the sense that it's a fishing expedition called cold reading. Cold reading is not what I'm doing.
Mhm.
You know, what I'm doing is a little different. It's more knowing what the person wants to accomplish, having the awareness to some degree of the obstacles that would prevent them from being able to do it. And that with that information, then watching their nonverbals and making best guesses about what they're going through until those guesses are helping that individual put their motives on the table.
Mhm.
So it's not meant to be even remotely psychic. It's meant to be connecting and insightful, perhaps.
Yes.
So what did you see that made you know it was a valid thing instead of cold reading?
What I saw was the physiological change that people would go through when you went from the read into just the beginning of the suggestion, almost teasing it, bringing the problem to the surface, and then finishing it off and then testing. And also with care at the back end of the suggestion, I think I'm getting way ahead, but this is what's coming to my mind, is future pacing into different challenges and conscious and then later unconscious competence of being able to do it consciously and then do whatever they need to do, the change being conscious and then unconscious later. But in the beginning, the attitude that revolves around really audiencing somebody and then kind of letting it set in what they're going through. That's the biggest takeaway I've had in the last couple of weeks.
Cool. I can tell you one of the big problems for a person who's good at the read. The read is meant to help people stay relevant to their outcome and relevant about what the challenges are. Okay.
Okay.
So there are people who believe I'm the most patient person they ever met because the project was staying relevant and therefore I was being patient, let's say. On the other hand, when demonstrating impatience for irrelevance, we run the risk of someone thinking you're incredibly impatient. So when we're doing a read, we've got to be artful about not looking impatient just because we're helping them get on a relevant point. And in order to help with that, you might set up conversational traps like, is it all right with you to decide to stay on the relevant point that will help you? Or would you like to be lost in distractions and have a lot of time get burned up? I mean, how do you want it to go? You know, and help the person to make a choice to stay on the relevant track, let's say. Because we can really impatient. We can look really impatient by accident. Because of the person wanting to talk about whatever they're wanting to talk about, and it may not match what will help them the most. Is that making any sense?
It makes total sense. It's sinking in, and I bet our audience appreciates it too. That last suggestion, that vaccination, as you called it, really makes a lot of sense, and I think that would clear up a lot of issues, especially with me personally working clinically. I really appreciate that.
Well, you know what I think? Cool. Well, you know what I think is we can enjoy an even better planned version of this, because I know we are doing this at a later time than we expected, and I'm literally in my doctor's office and have to walk into an appointment. But I sure enjoyed talking to you today, Josh, and I think we'll have a good time maybe exploring and teasing out more about this subject in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have fun, you guys.
Have a good day. Thank you, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Scott McFall talking about making the read. Not cold reading. We're actually making a clinical read with care as to what's happening with a person's situation. If any, well, whatever, we'll just cut that part out. How do you stop it?
Just say thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. I'll figure that out.
And broadcast.